If you are a Detroit Red Wings fan, you might want to listen up, because today we are talking about guys that Detroit could potentially go out there and target in a trade-like capacity. And I know what you might be thinking. You're looking at the screen, you're seeing this name, you're wondering, Lego, why in the world are you talking about this guy potentially getting traded? That's nonsense. And while I do agree, generally speaking, that this name would be nonsensical to discuss in trade talks, there are some conversations that I think are worth having, and it's why we're making this video here today. So let's head over to the Detroit Red Wings and talk about a defenseman from Columbus that could potentially be on the move. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Blue Jackets D-man Zach Werenski. And the idea that he could potentially get traded over to the Detroit Red Wings. Now, where is this all coming from? Let's head over onto what was posted about by Jeff Moss, DSR. He's the guy behind DetroitSportsRag.com. 10,000 followers, pretty interesting website. I mean, I'm not going to go out there and say that this is a fully Red Wings-focused Twitter page or guy even, because Moss tweets out about a whole bunch of stuff regarding Detroit-related sports. And he ended up posting this 2 days ago as well. I heard that Rod Wood was forced into retirement by the Ford family. Not his choice. It makes absolutely no sense they keep on letting him run his mouth and embarrassing the team like this on his way out the door. Now, of course, Rod Wood, he's the Detroit Lions guy, and the Ford family, yeah, we're not talking necessarily about Red Wings stuff. However, there was a pretty interesting reply from Radical Red Wing that I thought garnered some pretty decent attention and sparked up a conversation here. They said, I'm hearing some interesting Zach Werenski rumors as well. To which Moss replied, Werenski makes a lot of sense. After the bonus diatribe, I wouldn't be shocked if the guy wants out, and Yzerman is going to have to make a huge move. Obviously, there is the Detroit connection and the Larkin friendship. I don't know anything, but there are a lot of dots to connect. So I'll just be clear right off the bat here. Nowhere in this string of tweets are we definitively concluding that Zach Werenski is going to get traded to the Detroit Red Wings. However, with one anonymous Twitter user with 20 followers going out there and saying that there are rumors, and with another person replying and sparking up a conversation, I do think it's fair to dive into whether or not this makes sense or not. You see, Rick Bowness, he ended up having those comments the other day about not the Detroit Red Wings, about the Columbus Blue Jackets and how the team is okay with losing. They don't really care about it. They're just happy-go-lucky, winning hockey games, losing hockey games, whatever. It doesn't matter to them. We made a video a few days ago talking about how the comments really shook some people the wrong way, but also how it was essentially the same thing Patrik Laine said about Columbus a year ago. Out of the many Blue Jackets players who shortly responded to the media after Bowness's comments, Zach Werenski was one of those that you could tell he was pretty ticked off with the way Bowness described the situation. And in fact, it's not even like an exclusive thing, because the last time we had spoken about Zach Werenski, it was also a year ago when he was going out there and discussing those same Patrik Laine comments where Laine said the same thing. Oh, Columbus, they're okay with losing. They don't really have this super strong desire to win, and I don't really want to be a part of that. And Zach Werenski was one of the guys that was like, screw this guy, man. How are you going to go out there and talk about our team and do all this stuff? In fact, we also spoke about Werenski firing back at Rick Bowness too. That was actually the last video that we made about this guy. But with all of these puzzle pieces put into place, I am open to the idea that says that Zach Werenski could potentially be one of these guys that is not really happy that Rick Bowness is coming back. And this idea that, hey, you're the head coach that pretty much put us down in the mainstream media, and it's one of those, if you're not with us, you're against us type of things. Obviously, Bowness is with the Blue Jackets. Obviously, he wants to improve the team, and he said all those things from a place of love. But I could understand if deep down, some hockey players, especially those with big egos under the surface, would not have the time of day for Rick Bowness when everything is said and done. Now, I'm not saying Zach Werenski is like that. I don't know the guy personally. I don't know his personality. But I'm just saying if it resulted in him wanting out, I would not be surprised. Now, there is a connection as well that you can have with Dylan Larkin, D-Boss of the Detroit Red Wings. For one, Zach Werenski, he is a Michigan Wolverines alumni. He ended up playing with Dylan Larkin in that 2014-15 NCAA season. Ironically, one of the other guys that was also a top-tier point producer on that team was Andrew Kopp, followed up by JT Compher. So, yeah, I guess Zach Werenski has a pretty straightforward path to Detroit if he just follows in the footsteps of Larkin, Kopp, and Compher, all from that same team. Either that or, I don't know, Zach Hyman in Edmonton. But Werenski also is from Grosse Pointe, Michigan, USA. He is a local dude, and he's got a pretty decent cap hit. $9.583 million till the end of 2028. I'll admit, the contract only going 2 more seasons after this is not ideal. This is a guy that is going to make a lot of money on his next contract, and it could be even more because of the fact that he could very well win the Norris Trophy this season. I don't think that's out of the question here. But if Zach Werenski were to be propped up on the trade block, and if Stevie Y, with his desperation at this stage of the rebuild, were to come knocking on Columbus's door, would it not make the most sense for Werenski to head over to a team like the Detroit Red Wings? Now, just to be clear here, Werenski does have no move protection. He has full protection here, so he would have to okay a trade to wherever it is he gets sent over to. But Detroit, I would say it's probably a very likely destination if he were proposed with the option here to choose which team he goes to. This was also debated by a bunch of Red Wings fans in the comment section of that Twitter reply. Sure, what are you going to give up for a Norris finalist if not winner? Raymond? Seider? 4 first-round picks? Basically the same package that the Hughes deal was. Probably a little less because Werenski has a no-move, and he can force his way to Detroit if he wants. Another reply says it starts with Edvinsson and Danielson plus 2 firsts and maybe 1 more piece. Now, we did see a bunch of Red Wings fans over the past few weeks here talk about how, hey, I don't care how good Quinn Hughes is, if the guy was not going to re-sign, then we don't make that trade, especially if it includes Simon Edvinsson in the package. That was a pretty common sentiment from Red Wings fans over the past few days here. I wonder if the same thing could be said about Zach Werenski, because Werenski's contract also expires soon. Granted, it expires a year before Quinn's does, a year after Quinn's does, so there is that extra year. But if Werenski were to get traded to Detroit, you know that there was an element of he actually wanted to come here that wouldn't necessarily have been present with Quinn Hughes. Also, the Wolverines connection with Dylan Larkin, and he actually is a Michigan guy. You can say that a lot of the issues with Quinn would not be present with Werenski, but that's not to say that Quinn was a totally isolated situation as well. I mean, Quinn Hughes was from Michigan, essentially. He grew up in that area, and I think it was pretty much expected that he would have been a Red Wing in the 2018 draft, but no, he ended up going 1 pick after to Vancouver instead because the Red Wings took Filip Zadina. But Quinn Hughes also was a Wolverine, as was Werenski, not at the same time. At the end of the day, though, Zach Werenski is still a very good NHL defenseman, back-to-back 80-plus point years. If the Red Wings can get a guy like that in any sort of a trade, I'd say it's a pretty good one. Even if you have to give up a Simon Edvinsson, to be honest. But that's my opinion. You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about all of this Zach Werenski discourse? Do you think there's a chance he wants out of Columbus? Do you think there's a chance he forces a trade over to Detroit? Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.